In Cape Town, extortion is more than a crime. It's a sinister economy. For years, local businesses have paid steep protection fees, caught in a relentless tug-of-war between notorious criminal syndicates and ruthless gang bosses. But with the spike in violence and the brutal tactics these gangs use, the city's extortion network has now reached unprecedented levels. From nightclubs to construction sites and even the taxi industry, this story unveils the chilling grip extortionists have over Cape Town's economy. And with local authorities locked in a high-stakes battle against these syndicates, the stakes have never been higher. The rise of a ruthless extortion network. Extortion in Cape Town isn't new, but its escalation over recent years has been alarming. In September 2020, then Minister of Police, Bheki Cele, announced a task force to combat extortion. It was a long overdue measure to tackle what he labeled an emerging problem, but for local businesses, extortion was anything but new. By then, violent gangs were already deeply entrenched, demanding payments for protection and ruthlessly enforcing their dominance. Gangs initially took a massive hit during the 2020 lockdown, with curfews and shuttered businesses decimating their extortion income. But as Cape Town began to reopen, these groups roared back with a vengeance, deploying even more aggressive methods to recoup lost profits. Reports from 2021 reveal that lockdown losses had transformed these gangs into predators more ruthless than ever before. With the restrictions lifted, a new wave of violence swept through the city, and extortion spiraled out of control. A history of protection. Rackets and violent intimidation. Cape Town's extortion operations trace back decades. In the late 1990s, under gang lord Cyril Bika, the classic protection fee model began to take root in the city's central business district, CBD. Bika's criminal enterprises targeted nightlife establishments, demanding they employ his security firms, Pro Access and Red Security, or face violent repercussions. Bika's tactics were brutally effective. Businesses that resisted faced vandalism, violence, and assault. However, in 2011, Bika's assassination changed the power structure. A new player, Mark Liffman, emerged, merging Bika's companies with his own, Specialized Protection Services. But for those hoping for respite from extortion demands, Liffman's rise only marked the start of another violent cycle. By 2012, Liffman's firm controlled the city's nightlife security scene, instilling relative peace for a time. Nafis Modak's violent entry into the protection economy. When Nafis Modak entered Cape Town's extortion landscape, he disrupted the relative calm established by Liffman's group. Modak, known for his violent tactics, competed aggressively for security contracts, particularly in the nightclub sector. His entry in 2017 ignited a brutal turf war that plunged Cape Town's nightlife into chaos. As his enterprise expanded, it wasn't long before Modak forged alliances with notorious gangs like the Terrible Westsiders and the Junkie Funky Kids, unleashing an army of enforcers to intimidate rivals. This reliance on criminal gangs marked a shift in Cape Town's extortion network. By outsourcing violence to gang affiliates, the syndicates broadened their reach while shielding top figures from direct involvement. Bika had pioneered this method with his Hard Living's gang connections, and now Modak and Liffman's associates were following suit, leveraging ties to gangs like the Sexy Boys and the 27s, the growing impact on legitimate businesses and the CBD. As Cape Town's CBD reopened post-lockdown, extortionists seized the opportunity to widen their scope. What began with nightlife venues quickly extended to coffee shops, hotels, and even upscale apartment buildings. No sector was off limits. Fueled by the surge in business activities, extortion demands spread like wildfire. These protection payments soon became unavoidable for any establishment wanting to operate without harassment. Violence against businesses that resisted was swift and brutal, with arson, vandalism, and physical assaults becoming all too common. With no end in sight, extortion now dominates Cape Town's economic pulse, costing local businesses millions and eroding the sense of safety across the city. Construction and the rise of the construction mafia. One of the most alarming developments is the rise of the so-called construction mafia, particularly targeting Cape Town's booming construction sector. This wave of extortion began in 2014 in KwaZulu-Natal and rapidly spread nationwide, with Cape Town becoming a prime target. Construction sites from housing projects to commercial developments were invaded, workers intimidated, and projects stalled. The pandemic only exacerbated the crisis. By early 2023, City of Cape Town official Robbie Roberts reported that over 3 billion rand in construction projects faced extortion threats. Construction companies, increasingly unable to continue their work safely, have been forced to factor extortion fees into project bids, a grim acknowledgement of the mafia's hold over the industry. Taxi industry extortion, a long-standing violent feud. The taxi industry has long been a brutal battleground, and Cape Town is no exception. Known for its cutthroat competition, the industry is dominated by powerful mother bodies like Codetta and Kata, whose rivalry has led to scores of assassinations. Extortion has deep roots here, with operators paying hefty fees simply to secure their right to operate. These associations enforce their demands through a shadowy network of henchmen and hitmen known locally as Isinkabi. Operators unwilling or unable to meet extortion demands face violent retribution, with many taxi bosses murdered as rival groups vie for dominance. This violent undercurrent threatens not only the safety of those in the industry, but the stability of the city's critical transport infrastructure. The role of corruption in the legal system's failures. The failure to control Cape Town's extortion economy stems partly from systemic corruption and inconsistencies in the justice system. While prominent figures like Liftman have been released on bail despite facing serious charges, others like Modak remain behind bars, awaiting trial. This selective justice only fuels public distrust and emboldens criminal networks, reinforcing the cycle of extortion and violence. High-ranking officials and police officers have been implicated in these criminal networks, further eroding public confidence. Modak's arrest in 2021 brought to light alleged collusion with corrupt police officials involved in gun running and other criminal enterprises. These revelations underline the challenges facing law enforcement in tackling a deeply entrenched extortion economy. Cape Town's future, a city in the crosshairs. Cape Town's struggle against extortion is more than a local issue. It's a warning to cities across the nation. As gangs continue to adapt, expand, and diversify their extortion tactics, the economic and social costs are mounting. The city's authorities, often outgunned and overwhelmed, face an uphill battle to reclaim control until the root causes are addressed. Poverty, corruption, and the sheer profitability of crime. The extortion economy will continue to cast a shadow over Cape Town. For now, the battle rages on, with Cape Town's businesses, workers, and residents bearing the brunt of a vicious cycle that seems tragically far from breaking. The Cape Town gang extortion problem has evolved into a pervasive criminal ecosystem where multiple industries and services are systematically exploited. These extortion schemes often operate under the guise of protection fees, where businesses, ranging from nightclubs to construction sites, are coerced into paying gangs for protection. These groups threaten violence, property damage, or even physical harm if payments aren't made, placing incredible financial and emotional strain on business owners. What started in the nightlife industry decades ago has now spread across the city, with criminal networks embedding themselves in essential economic sectors, including construction and public transport. In recent years, organized crime in Cape Town has found new footholds in the construction and taxi industries. The so-called construction mafia, for instance, has escalated its activities, halting major building projects and demanding cuts from contractors. Violence associated with these extortion tactics is severe. Construction workers have been shot and equipment destroyed. These incidents underscore the brazen and ruthless nature of Cape Town's organized crime groups, as well as their willingness to disrupt public infrastructure for profit. Construction companies have now started incorporating extortion fees into their budgets, revealing just how entrenched these criminal demands have become within legitimate businesses. The public transport sector, particularly the minibus taxi industry, has also been a prime target for extortion. Taxi operators are often forced to pay multiple fees to their respective associations for route permits, memberships, and so-called bucket fees, or ad hoc extortion payments. Powerful taxi bosses enforce these demands through violence, using hitmen and enforcers to eliminate competition or quell dissent within their ranks. This practice has led to an ongoing cycle of internal violence and assassinations, as younger, more ruthless leaders rise to power within these associations, further destabilizing the industry. These extensive extortion networks have turned Cape Town into a battleground, where businesses large and small struggle to survive under the constant threat of criminal exploitation. Efforts to combat these criminal networks have yielded limited results, and the revolving door of arrests and reorganization within gangs only seems to embolden these groups. As these extortion schemes grow more sophisticated, Cape Town's economy and public safety are increasingly held hostage by the shadow of organized crime.